We turn to our Friday roundtable discussion of some of the week's top stories. Joining us tonight, Carol Giacomo, a member of the New York Times editorial board, and Gideon Rose, managing editor of Foreign Affairs magazine. Good Friday to you both.
And to you.
It's election day in Iran. And my question is, how excited should Americans be about what is taking place in Iran? And Carol, I'll start with you.
Well, overexcitement is often dangerous. I think the trends seem to be very interesting, to say the least. A lot of the turnout seems to be very good. The run-up to the election has been very vigorous. There's been a huge amount of public demonstration in favor of the opposition, this leading opposition candidate, Mousavi. And I think the dialogue, the debate that's gone on has been pretty intense, with a lot of issues being put out on the table.
But is there a danger that we are being, as Americans, I mean, too optimistic here, that we're thinking too much is really going to change?
Well, we tend to do that, yeah.
Well, I think that, if you think that everything is going to turn on a dime, the republic is going to either become sweet and happy and nice to everybody or evaporate, yeah, then you're being way too optimistic, because even if the reformists win, that's not going to happen. On the other hand, what you're seeing, to a certain extent, is a limited form of democracy in action. And it's clear that some kind of popular expression of discontent is getting a hearing. And if the reformists do win, there's a slight chance for some kind of moderation, at least in the rhetoric of the regime, maybe some of the policies on the margins. And at the very least, this is part of the long-term process of modernization coming to Iran, and the public getting used to having a say in how the government is run. And that is a good thing.
It is a good thing, and it certainly looks like many Iranians have been very enthusiastic about this process. There are freedoms they've enjoyed during this time. Is that a concern for the leadership of Iran?
Some of the leadership has expressed concern. The president, Ahmadinejad himself, has expressed concern and even been, I think, somewhat ominous in some of the comments he's made about the degree to which people have been expressing opposition. But and in the past, there have been expressions, sort of more overt expressions of political discourse that have been rolled back subsequently. So I think there's a concern for that. But you have to remember, 2/3 of Iranians are under 30, and they were not part of the revolution, and they are looking to a wider world. And so I do think that there's a long-term trend there that is positive and that the United States needs to tap into.
I thought some of his rhetoric actually was kind of funny. I mean, he accused his opponent at one point of Hitlerian tactics. If the Holocaust didn't happen, what's so wrong with being Hitler? It's like that internal inconsistency there that I thought was kind of amusing. But
the concern, perhaps, is that you've had these public demonstrations. They've been massive in scale for supporting either Mousavi, who is the more moderate of the candidates, or Ahmadinejad, who, of course, is the hardliner. One of these guys is not going to win. What happens to that public that may feel disenfranchised as a result? Do you think there's a danger of violence?
There hasn't been all that much of a history in Iran of that kind of violence. I don't think that's the real concern. Unless, I don't know.
Maybe the concern is euphoria.
The reform movement, when it passed from its heyday in the 90s, it didn't go with a bang. I don't think it'll go with a bang this time if it loses. The real power, the regime is in strong control of the country, and Khamenei is really in power behind the
supreme
scenes,
leader.
The supreme leader. So I don't expect any kind of turmoil in the short term or even midterm. But you're laying the groundwork here for something that might come down the road in, who knows when, now, a generation, whatever.
All right, well, let's go from supreme leader to dear leader, shifting gears now to North Korea. We have the conviction of these 2 American journalists now, and then at the same time we have the United States, which clearly is concerned about the growing nuclear ambitions of this nation. The United Nations is now getting involved, working on sanctions and inspections at sea. And yet the inspections at sea seem to have a problem. You have to ask permission of the ship you plan to board. How serious is this?
I think the extent to which the sanctions that are supposed to be approved today reflect a more unified view of the major powers, that is a very good thing, and that sends a stronger message to North Korea. This particular sanction that you're talking about does have a loophole. I mean, you can't. The resolution does not provide that is backed up with force. It does, rely on voluntary mechanisms.
I should explain that what we're talking about here is being able to board ships at sea that are suspected.
Or airplanes,
and they could be a port
ground,
as well,
yeah.
that are expected of carrying material, either weapons or nuclear, coming from or going to North Korea.
That's correct.
Look, basically the problem here is we can't really live with North Korean nukes, but we can't get rid of them either. So the challenge whenever they're acting out like this is how do you respond in such a way that it doesn't accommodate them too much or fray your global nonproliferation regime and send the wrong signal to everybody else, while at the same time not provoking a crisis, letting them get your goat and escalating this thing to actual conflict. So they're devising sanctions.
You said something different there, which was we're not going to get them to give up their nukes. I mean, this had been the policy of previous administrations.
Yeah, but that policy went away once they got nukes. But you can't admit that you don't want to admit that your old policy is no longer effective. So you basically continue to mouth it while in practice backing off from it. So and the North Koreans are trying to urge everybody to pay attention, pay attention. This is like a cry for, not a cry for help, but it's a cry for attention. And the challenge here is how do you not let them get your goat and not overreact, while at the same time not letting them get away with murder and sending the wrong signals, therefore, to everybody else around the world that it's okay to move forward.
Carol, you get the last say, and I want to ask you about these American journalists. Are they a hinder for the United States to get tougher on North Korea?
It's a complication, but it's important for the administration to try to keep the two issues separate. The women, the journalists are delink them. Yeah. It's a humanitarian issue. There's a precedent for North Korea allowing, the release of Americans that they've taken into custody.
Carol Giacomo and Gideon Rose, thank you very much. Have a great weekend.